And here's another Steiff that we never see. This one is Devil, and it is exactly what it says. That's a very unusual one we don't see often. Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go! Located between the Gulf of Mexico and Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Florida has been a tourist destination since the 1920s, when the Coliseum Ballroom at the center of the picture and the adjacent recreational areas were built. They feature the city's shuffleboard court, the lawn bowling club, the chess club, the senior center, and Mirror Lake, right adjacent to downtown St. Pete, which has gone through a big renaissance lately, and this is where the annual antique show is held. So since it's Sunday morning and we're just getting ready to open in half an hour, I thought I'd give you an opportunity to see how beautiful and wonderful this building is. It's my favorite antique show venue anywhere I go. A lot of famous musicians came through here. Guy Lombardo and the Royal Canadians played on that stage. A whole lot of other famous jazz players of the era played here. Folks may not recognize it. I did not recognize it, but I was told by somebody that this advertisement from the late 1930s features Ronald Reagan.
Usually hard enough to
My
find.
neighbor has really cool stuff too. Here's a big needle case from a store. So you, depending on which needle you needed, you would turn this and then you would open and that would be the correct one for your use. It's a spinner in there. This is going to date to about 1915. Well, actually it says 1907 patent date. So, and the last one says 1910, so somewhere in the teens. It's a pretty neat piece, priced at $295. I haven't seen another one in ages. Here's a neat piece. This is an improved chain pump by the Richland Pump Company. This is something that's going to have been made about 1900 to use on a farm, and this would have actually been a wooden pump that would have been portable, and then you could attach it to whatever body of water, whether it was a trough or a well, and crank it to pump water. We have it so easy nowadays. So these are Equi chairs from Mexico. They're all hand hewn. They do still make similar today, but these are about 30 years old, and the coloration is different in the older ones than the new ones. The new ones are actually kind of garish by comparison. And they're incredibly light, but they're really sturdy and well made. This is something that started as really just Mexican folk art and things people made to use, and really became a very fun, casual style. This dealer has these priced at $295 for the pair. The new versions sell that much each, so it's a great price. There are a lot of good deals at this. This alcove is completely filled with wonderful toys. Such a great specialty to see. All of these are Steiff from Germany. Steiff's motto was Knopf in Ohr, which means button in ear. And you can see here the Steiff button in the ear with the tag. It actually says Steiff on the little button, S-T-E-I-F-F. There are a lot of unusual pieces here. The rhinoceros head is definitely something that I haven't seen before. They all had names. She's called Nosy, naturally. Steiff originally did teddy bears, just like Ideal in the United States, jointed mohair. But then you have everything from warthogs to monkeys, any critter you can imagine, and a giant camel. Really unusual to see. This is a great piece. So I wanted to show you some of the other wonderful things this dealer has, because they have such a great selection of toys and dolls and characters. Charlie Chaplin in the composition is a very rare piece. I've never seen him before. I also noticed that you have the boxer Max Schmeling also in the composition. Buddy Lee is a very popular character. These were distributed through Lee Jeans to help establish them back in the 50s. These are worth a few $100s now. I think about $350 is average price. The Skookum Doll. This is an interesting one. If you look up close, you see wrinkles on the face. The original ones were actually made of heads with dried apples. It was to promote the apple industry in Yakima, Washington, and it caught on and became a national phenomenon, and then later ones are made of composition. Some really great folk dolls. We also see some good china heads here. She's very cute. They have a lot of what would have been 5 and dime store items originally, but they're snow babies. These are little bisque porcelain figurines. Most of these are going to date to 1920s and 30s. And they are seldom seen today because most of them are in collections. We see snow babies now that are marked snow baby, and those were all done as reproductions of these in the 1980s and 90s. Look at this great cardboard house scene. Nice little playhouse. Most of these would have been destroyed by their owners when they were children many years ago. And then we've got a really great old Santa Claus display. Here we have some of the Steiff miniatures, little miniature teddy bears. More Christmas. These are really early Christmas pieces. Santa riding an elephant, I find that very curious. A lot of these date to the 19-teens and 20s. And here's another Steiff that we never see. This one is Devil, and it is exactly what it says. That's a very unusual one we don't see often. And then we have Uncle Sam here in paper mache riding a paper mache Easter Bunny candy container. Here's some more lovely late Victorian China head dolls. There's a nice selection here of dexterity games. I had a collection of these and they did not stay in stock long. They are very collectible these days. A little bit of Halloween and cat-related figures. Here's another mohair teddy with the glass eyes. And then we have a couple of Beloved Belindi dolls in oilcloth. Beloved Belindi was one of the characters in Raggedy Ann originally. Kids from the 50s will definitely recognize Howdy Doody. This one is mint in the original box. I have not checked to see if everything is wooden, if you know that joke. If you don't know it, I'll spare you. Here's a really fun display of Big Little books, and they've got a bunch of different titles. These were very popular starting in the 30s, and they made them even up until I was a kid in the 70s. Buck Rogers is one of the more desirable ones because of the early space-related things. There were all sorts of different styles. There were mysteries, women sleuths, Dick Tracy, Radio Patrol, Uncle Wiggily. I mean, it just ran the gamut. There were thousands of different titles of these, and they are, in fact, very collectible now. Look at the great graphics there. This is actually a younger dealer, and so the idea that younger dealers don't know anything about antiques is definitely not true because he has real antiques and some really gorgeous stuff. This piece here is a brass desk set with the inkwells, the box, the match safe, the candlestick holder. This is a brass piece from about 1895. We have a toll-painted box behind. The English little storage box here as well. And then he has some interesting Asian art and artifacts, and there's a lot of interest in this now. This particular piece is a Chinese wash stand with the very detailed carving. A very beautiful piece priced at about $12.50. We're going to show some nice ginger jars. Another Canton blue floor vase, and then we have uranium glass. These are true Vaseline pieces, mainly Victorian era, although a few of these are early 20th century as well. There's a beautiful glass piece here I'd like to show. This one is cameo glass. This is the original two-layer carved cameo from the 1890s. This may be by the Webb Company. It's the King and his Scribe and about 40 or 50% of these broke in the process of making them. So finding genuine Victorian cameo glass is not an easy thing now. We have some different Native American at this show. The jacket is Seminole. These were all piecework. If you look up close, all of these are individual pieces of fabric, and then the shell pieces are made of silk. Everything was pieced together because the Seminole traditionally didn't have access for big pieces of fabric, were not available to them, so they had to use what they got. The print to the left is a Curtis. It's an original from 1910. The bottle is probably Tlingit from the Northwest. Now, people get confused about the swastika. Those were good luck charms and symbols. They originated back in the Sanskrit in India. It's been used all over the world. I was confused until recently. I thought One Direction was the Nazis turning it upside down. It wasn't. It was used interchangeably. And until the Nazis came to power and used it in order to bring the impression that they were going to do good things, it had a different connotation than it does now. Native Americans quit using it in their basketry because of the Second World War. So we have some grinding stones and points and some whorls, and then this neat piece here, which I may have shown before in another video, but I still have, is this rifle sheath. I believe that the beadwork is crow or silk. There's just no way to show everything that's in a show, so I'm going to do a few walk-bys so that you can see some of the rest of the show. This space also has a lot of really nice dolls. This is more doll focused, and they have a lot of the French fashion and German fashion dolls from the late 19th and early 20th century. When you can see the teeth, that's more desirable. When the eyes move, that's more desirable. So these are very desirable for those factors. Also, if you notice, she has her original clothing. That's very important in the valuation of old dolls. They're worth the most if they do have their original. Here's one that's got its original clothing and wig. It's priced about $6.50. Dolls of boys are harder to find than dolls of girls, and that makes a difference in value as well. I'm going to go sideways with this. This one's a Peter Max. He did this for the Kentucky Derby in 2000. It's priced at $100 for this print. That's a pretty good one. If it was signed, it'd be worth about $500 or $600. We'll go back up right here. These folks have nice China Elegant Depression glass and a really amazing tall Murano pink glass lamp in the corner with this ruffled shade. That is right out of the 50s, and that is a really spectacular color, very on trend now. They also have several bowls that are Murano and Siddenstricker from our country that are fused glass, and these are very collectible, and the prices on the Siddenstricker are very good, around the $20 range. People haven't really caught on yet, but they will. What is this piece?
That is a Burmese silver bowl.
Wow, that's
Arts
beautiful.
of Asia, referencing, and Sotheby's and Christie's uses this as reference. This bowl is in this article right Burmese silver.
Oh yes, from the Burmese Silver Age.
You're going to have to send me the video, of course. Then if you look at the bowl, this figure with the deer's head,
Yes.
elk head, is on that bowl. So they're referencing that exactly.
That is a wonderful piece. When was the era of Burmese silver? I'm not really familiar with it.
About 1900. So the
Circa 1900.
Christie's, they used that. They had a smaller one that they sold. They would fit inside there, way less detail. At Christie's, I believe it went for $1,500. This one here is $3,000.
3,000. That actually seems very reasonable. If it was American, it'd be 3 times that price. And look how beautiful and the detail.
Work into that thing.
That is fantastic. This is my friend Jean's space, and she comes down from Michigan. She is also a fellow nomad, and she drives many thousands of miles a year and does shows all the way from Portland, Oregon to Rochester, Minnesota, to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where she's from. And she does have a piece here that I think is be interesting for you modernist people. It's Francoma, and this particular vase is it's supposed to be loosely based on a modernist interpretation of Native American design. This is going to date to about 1970. Francoma has become very collectible. This piece here with the hand painting is a Fenton Four Seasons from the year 2006, which was just about the last year Fenton was in production. Some of those late Fenton pieces are going to turn out to be quite rare in the long run. And then she also has some wonderful French portraiture. These miniature portraits are very collectible. The frames are generally in bone, and then the painting is done on porcelain generally. And on the back of these you'll usually see something that looks rather like newsprint. This is how they always backed these back then. These are primarily from the 1870s through about 1900. And they are very collectible as well now.
From the other side.
Also, you're going to see here some Viking and L.E. Smith and other 1960s era glass in these really bright capri blue and bright lime green colors. Some of my personal favorites, and interestingly enough, blue is supposed to be the Pantone color of the year, so we'll all be using it, I guess. People know Coco Chanel as a designer, of course, but Chanel jewelry is particularly desirable right now, and this dealer has 2 cases full of Chanel jewelry and accessories. This blue one here is very similar to Pools of Light from the 1920s and 30s, but it's in the lovely blue tone, and it's a very long chain compared to what was made then. These are really exquisite pieces, and they say what's in a name? Well, quite a lot. Chanel is regarded because it is very good quality. If you see these and compare them to lookalikes, there is no comparison. There's a pair of really neat rhinestone studded Chanel glasses. The clear cuff in the Lucite with the lace is an interesting thing, and of course the Chanel logo in the rhinestones means that you can spot those from a mile. But Chanel is something to be out there looking for. If you have access to it, buy it because people want it. We also see a surprising amount of interest in Navajo and Native American jewelry here in Florida. There seems to be a psychic connection between this part of Florida and the Southwest. I meet a lot of people in this area who either travel to visit or have lived in Santa Fe or other parts of New Mexico and Arizona, and I think it's because they like the warmth, but it's dry and not humid, so it's a comparison for them. This big hand-painted piece is especially interesting to me with the chieftain on it. It's got coral turquoise, green turquoise, and the hand-painted center, and it's huge. Never seen any. There's also some really nice squash blossoms here. You'll see the green turquoise and the blue on the left. The squash blossoms are these little pieces that come off of the sides, these little trumpet-like. You'll see these made, some with designer signatures, and the design ones can be even more valuable, but they are big and showy and people love them, and they're generally several $100s or more because they're all made out of silver. All of that is done by hand. I personally am a big fan of Czech jewelry, and so I wanted to show that there are some really nice 1920s and 30s Czech pieces in here. Particularly, you can tell some of the shaping of the stones is an indication of Czech, and you can also tell they typically had a long drapery. Oftentimes they had this sort of a medallion at the bottom. This particular one has King Tut because that's a 1920s motif that's very popular. And then here, a lot of Czech pins in deco styles. And here's a Czech piece here that would be quite showy when worn because it's got lots of strands. The turtle is something that jumps out at me as being really unique. And you'll see these kind of clusters, and oftentimes that is an indication of Czech as well. This dealer's also just gotten a collection of Victorian English fobs, and there's some really exceptional ones here. The hand holding the crystal design motif that we see quite frequently, and we were just talking about, is it for friendship? Is it because the hand had some sort of specific importance? We're not really sure, but it's a motif we see in Victorian a lot. There are ones made of silver coins like the dimes below. This one with the fleur-de-lis is quite intricate and would sell very well in certain parts of the country where I go. And then she's taking out for us a bunch of Albertina chains, and she's going to tell me a little about what that is, because that's not a term I had heard before.
It's an English watch chain, and they generally have, I've made these into bracelets.
Okay.
And hung bits on them like love tokens and English fobs. They generally had a tassel at the end. And they're a shorter chain.
And such detail.
So this is the original length of the chain. That's how the length of the chain, it would have had a tassel. That's the original tassel on the end. And it's just this long.
And so the length is shorter because they're just putting it across their vest into a pocket.
Exactly.
Really wonderful. Thank you so much. Look at the really crazy spider on this piece here. This is a dealer from Quebec who comes down and does shows, and he has wonderful things that we're not used to seeing in the States. These are pretty great shoes here. And premium luxury, and it's still certainly less expensive in the antique and vintage world than it would be if you were to go to the Hermès store. The zebra on the box is a very sweet piece. It's Italian. This is a Czech deco painted vase, 1930s. The Czech did very similar to Clarice Cliff in England with the bazaarware, where they did very brightly painted deco designs on porcelain. This is a wonderful piece here, the dancer. And she will be very gentle. She is another European porcelain piece. They're starting to be collectible. They are old enough, some of them, to be vintage now. These wonderful glass pieces. Are the orange glass pieces, are these...
The orange one is Schneider.
It is Schneider.
And the one next is Dome.
The one's next to it's Dome, okay.
Dome Majorelle.
Thank you. Yes, this piece, the Dome piece, you'll see a mottling to it. Dome Nancy. Nancy of France is the city it's made. Dome is D-A-U-M. It's very, very collectible. And next to it, with also the applied work, is a piece that is Schneider. Schneider is a company a lot of people aren't familiar with, but it is of similar quality and value to Dome, Mosier, and the other important European makers, so something to look for. Here is a dealer who has a lot of Tonka and Nylint toys. Some of these have been restored, some are original, like the Tonka Farms here. Prices are generally in the $100 to $200 range for ones in good condition, and they are increasingly difficult to find. Here's a Tonka with the camper topper, hard to find piece in original condition. And then you've got the jungle wagon with some of the jungle animals. That's out of the 70s, and that's not something that I've actually ever seen with the animals before. I don't even remember that from childhood. The thing about going to a show like this with specialized dealers is there's so many amazing things. You could practically do a tutorial about any of them. So here are a ton of Lucite purses. Carved, black. Down here we have one in the confetti with the silver streaks through it. There's the rust colored that approximate tortoise shell. This green color is a very scarce color. I've honestly never seen one in that color before. This one with the rhinestones and the cutouts. This dealer, again, prices are going to be top of market, but that's because this dealer has the best selection I have ever seen anywhere in the United States of this sort of thing. Lots of rhinestone studded. You know, and some of these are priced in the $125, $145 range, which is actually fairly reasonable for these. And then some of them that are unusual shapes and unusual colors are quite a bit more. But try finding one. And if you do out there, for those of you who are resellers, be aware there is a good market for this. Look at this one with the poodles painted on it from the 1950s. That is not something that I've ever encountered anywhere before. So this poodle piece that I'm all excited about is a Lardy, and that's actually Will Hardy. He's still alive in his 90s. He was from New York. He designed these. I believe that the painting was done freehand. It might have been done by someone in his factory or someone afterwards, but Lardy was the first one to do the Lucite handbags right after the Second World War. And then others followed, and we'll talk about some of those names too. There are not a lot of hand-painted pieces in Lucite purses, so this is just a really amazing display, an entire wall of them. This piece is a Rialto of New York. This was another one of the big makers. They also made Lucite furniture pieces. I've had a few of those over the years. The rhinestone encrusting is very unusual. Most of these are marked on the hinge, although some do have labels. This one is a Patricia of Miami. Patricia of Miami is distinguished by the loop handle that you see right there. So if you find one unmarked, that's what makes it Patricia of Miami. This one is Miles of New York. You can kind of read the sticker in the bottom, which is Miles, and the lovely person who is helping me, who has this wonderful collection, will show us the rhinestone studded top. It's unusual to see them completely clear. This one is a Llewellyn, and that's engraved on the hinge as well. And Llewellyn was the one who invented the machinery to carve this, because it was not as strong as Bakelite, so they couldn't carve it in the exact same manner. So he came up with the equipment to actually do these carvings, and so that's a hallmark of theirs, although many other companies eventually copied. This one is a Charles Kahn. It has its original paper tag in it. It's awfully small to show on video, but Charles Kahn was actually a Florida producer. There were several that made these handbags in Florida because they became all the rage. This one is a Florida handbag, and you'll see Florida handbags made in Miami is the tag I'm trying to hold up there. And Florida handbags, I've noticed that they often have this metal ball clasp. You have to make sure these still clasp well. Sometimes they were used to the point where they're worn and they won't stay shut, and then they're not as valuable. I also have noticed that Florida handbags actually often did these rhombus shapes and trapezoidal pieces. Anyway, they have such an amazing group of things, and they spend half their year in Florida and half up north, so here's a way that you can find them. They've got an Etsy store and eBay, and just really beautiful stuff. It was a lot of fun talking to them and learning more, and I hope you're enjoying it. I wanted to show these even though they're rather dark because they have amazing detail. They are French ewers. They are marble based. They date from approximately 1860, and they are part of what was called a garniture set. And a garniture set would have been on a mantelpiece in Victorian times. You would have had the ewers, vase, and a pair of candlesticks. So 5 pieces. And the great thing with the is that they are so well detailed. You can see the little cherub. I hope you can. We can at least see their face and their wings. You have the hunter with the dog on the side. The other reason I wanted to show these is because I hear all the time how younger people are not interested in antiques. Well, the dealer was telling me that her son, who is 22, surprised her when she took them out of the house by saying, "Please don't take those and sell those because I want you to keep them. I want them. And I want to have them when you're gone." And I thought, see, this just tells you everything turns around. Mid-century modern's popular now. True antiques were popular before, and things cycle, so lots. People think of quilts as being something that people made for design, but a lot of them were just to be practical. And you hear about old flour sacks. Well, this one came from New Orleans and was made out of a pure cane sugar sack, 100 pounds from New Orleans. And this is just what people did. They used what they had. And these sort of primitives that really are handmade and unusual in this regard are very collectible because they have these lit, and I hadn't gotten to show you before, these 1920s and 30s era lamps with all of the glass applied in fruit baskets. Very hard to find. They're really quite showy and beautiful. This brass tray has Pietra Dura, stone inlay. Hard to find. Well, this is George the Antique Nomad, and I'm getting ready to sign off because the show's almost over. It's been a good one. Made all my goals, and that's great. And I got to meet a couple of people who watch me, and thank you. I appreciate you coming to the show. I hope all of you will see me at a show somewhere around the country or in an antique mall or someplace that we share the passion for the old and the interesting. Bye for now, and thank you so much. We'll see you again. Coming live from St. Petersburg, and next time it'll be somewhere else in Florida and on from there. Thanks a lot now. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.